Hey everyone, welcome to a deep dive.
Yeah.
That's all about becoming a communication master.
Communication.
You've sent over a really interesting mix of materials on communication skills, and we're here to help you extract the absolute gold.
Yeah.
We'll unpack the key insights, those aha moments that can actually change how you connect with people in every part of your life.
What's fascinating is how much of this material emphasizes that communication is about so much more than just the words we use.
Right.
It's a dynamic
Yeah.
process with a whole lot of moving parts.
Right. It's not just about talking.
Yeah.
It's about sending and receiving messages on multiple levels.
Yeah.
But before we get too far, let's back up.
Yeah.
How do these sources define communication?
They really expand the definition beyond what we typically think of.
Okay.
Communication encompasses verbal and nonverbal cues, written and visual elements.
Okay.
It's the entire package we present to the world, whether intentionally or not.
That makes me think about how even something as simple as a font choice in an email can affect how the message is received.
Absolutely. And this broader view of communication is crucial because it helps us become more aware of the messages we're sending
Right.
and receiving.
Oh, wow.
It's like suddenly having this high-definition lens for understanding interactions.
It's making me rethink every email, text, and conversation I've ever had. Okay, so we've established that communication is this multifaceted thing.
Yes.
The materials also break it down into different types.
Yes.
Right.
They talk about verbal, nonverbal, written, and visual communication.
Uh-huh.
And what's interesting is they don't see these as separate silos.
Okay.
They often work together
Yeah.
to create a more impactful message.
It's like when you're giving a presentation, you've got your spoken words, your slides, and your body language all working together.
Yes.
Or sometimes against each other, I guess. But what stood out to me is how the materials emphasize the importance of understanding the elements of communication: the sender, message, medium, receiver, and feedback.
Understanding these elements is crucial because it gives you a framework for analyzing communication breakdowns.
Okay.
It's like having a diagnostic tool.
Right.
For example, the source material talks about a scenario where an important message was sent via email, but the receiver never actually saw it because it got lost in their overflowing inbox.
Oh, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
So the breakdown was in the medium.
Yeah.
Email wasn't the right choice for that particular message.
Exactly. And the source goes on to say that had the sender been more aware of the receiver's context and preferred communication style, they might have chosen a different medium, like a phone call or even a face-to-face conversation.
So it's not just about crafting a great message. It's about strategically choosing the right channel to ensure it actually reaches its intended audience.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant takeaway.
And this ties into the broader importance of communication skills, which the source material repeatedly emphasizes.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how they connect effective communication to success in personal relationships, professional settings, academic achievements, and even conflict resolution.
It's like good communication is the secret ingredient for everything.
Right.
I'm particularly interested in how they link active listening to stronger personal relationships.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's about more than just nodding your head while someone talks.
Absolutely. The source material dives deep into the concept of active listening,
Right.
emphasizing that it's about truly understanding the other person's perspective,
Okay.
not just waiting for your turn to speak.
Okay.
They actually cite research showing that couples who practice active listening report higher levels of relationship satisfaction
Wow.
and are less likely to experience conflict.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So it's not just some feel-good concept.
Yeah.
There's actual data backing it up.
Exactly. And they go on to say that active listening involves paying attention to both verbal and nonverbal cues.
Yeah.
For instance, noticing if someone's voice gets higher or their body language becomes closed off when talking about a certain topic can reveal underlying emotions.
That's so interesting. It's
Yeah.
like we can learn to read between the lines and pick up on those subtle cues that might otherwise go unnoticed.
Right. And the source provides practical tips for becoming a better active listener,
Okay.
like paraphrasing what you've heard to ensure understanding and asking clarifying questions to dig deeply.
I'm already making a mental note to try those techniques.
Good.
This deep dive is already changing how I think about communication.
And we've only just begun.
Wow.
The material also gets into this really fascinating dynamic between verbal and nonverbal communication.
Okay.
They even set it up as a bit of a face-off.
Ooh. Tell me more about this communication showdown.
Okay.
Who usually wins, words or body language?
Well, according to the source, the most compelling communication happens when verbal and nonverbal cues are in sync.
Okay.
They reinforce each other, creating a clear and consistent message.
Uh-huh.
But when they clash, things get really interesting.
I can imagine. It's
Yeah.
like when someone says, I'm fine, but their tone and facial expressions say otherwise.
Exactly.
Okay.
The source material calls that a mixed message
Okay.
and points out that these can lead to misunderstandings and even distrust.
Yeah.
They provide a really compelling example from a workplace setting where a manager was praising an employee's work verbally,
Uh-huh.
but their body language,
Mhm.
arms crossed, minimal eye contact,
Yeah.
conveyed a completely different message.
Wow. Talk about sending mixed signals.
Right.
I've definitely been in situations like that where I felt like someone wasn't being completely genuine,
Yeah.
even if their words sounded positive.
It's a common experience.
Yeah.
And this is where becoming more attuned to nonverbal communication can be incredibly valuable.
So it's like we need to become communication detectives.
Yes.
Constantly looking for clues to decode the true meaning behind someone's words and actions.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the source provides some great insights into how to do just that.
This is reminding me of those times when I can just tell someone's not being completely upfront, even if their words sound convincing.
Right.
It's like my gut is picking up on those nonverbal inconsistencies.
And that intuition is often spot on.
Yeah.
The source material points out that humans are incredibly sensitive to nonverbal cues.
Okay.
Even if we're not consciously aware of it,
Wow.
they actually cite a study that found that in face-to-face communication,
Okay.
over 90% of the emotional meaning is conveyed through nonverbal channels,
Wow.
like facial expressions,
Yeah.
tone of voice,
Uh-huh.
and body language.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
So even if we think we're hiding our true feelings,
right.
our bodies are probably giving us away.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a bit. The source material also delves into those all-important skills, empathy and active listening, which
Yeah.
we touched on earlier. It's like
Yeah.
they're the communication superpowers we all need.
They really are.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that they go beyond just being nice or having good manners.
Right.
The source frames them as essential tools for navigating complex situations,
Okay.
especially when emotions are running high.
So it's about more than just saying, I understand how you feel.
Right.
It's about actually putting yourself in the other person's shoes and truly grasping their perspective.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that requires a willingness to step outside of our own biases and assumptions.
Okay.
The source material gives a really powerful example of this in a workplace conflict scenario.
Okay.
Imagine two colleagues, both highly skilled,
Okay.
but with very different working styles.
Right.
One is very detail-oriented and methodical,
Mm-hmm.
while the other is more big-picture focused
Right.
and thrives on spontaneity.
Oh, I can see how that could lead to some clashes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the source material highlights how, without empathy, this situation could easily escalate into resentment and animosity.
Right.
Each person might see the other as incompetent or difficult, fueling further misunderstandings.
But with empathy, they might start to see things differently.
Exactly.
Okay.
By making an effort to understand the other person's perspective, their motivations, their strengths, their challenges,
Right.
they might begin to appreciate their different working styles as complementary rather than conflicting.
So empathy becomes this bridge that helps people connect on a deeper level,
Yes.
even when they see the world in different ways.
Precisely.
Wow.
And the source material goes on to emphasize that empathy is not about agreeing with the other person's perspective
Okay.
or condoning their actions.
Right.
It's simply about acknowledging and validating their feelings and experiences.
That makes a lot of sense. It's
Yeah.
like saying, I see you, I hear you, and I understand where you're coming from.
Right.
Even if I don't necessarily agree with everything you're saying.
Exactly.
Right.
And that validation can be incredibly powerful,
Yeah.
especially in situations where someone is feeling misunderstood or dismissed.
Okay, so empathy is about understanding and validating the other person's perspective.
Yes.
But what about active listening? How does
Oh,
that fit into the picture?
The source material beautifully connects these two skills,
Okay.
highlighting that empathy provides the foundation for active listening.
Okay.
You can't truly listen to someone if you're not making an effort to understand their emotional state and perspective.
So it's not just about hearing the words. It's
Right.
about paying attention to all those nonverbal cues we talked about earlier. Their
Yeah.
tone of voice, their facial expressions, their body language.
Exactly.
Got it.
And the source provides some really practical tips for becoming a more active listener,
Okay.
like maintaining eye contact,
Mhm.
using verbal cues like or I see,
Mm,
to show you're engaged,
right.
and asking clarifying questions to make sure you're understanding correctly.
I love that they give concrete actions to try. It's not just about passively absorbing information.
Uh-huh.
It's about actively engaging with the speaker
Yes,
and demonstrating that you're fully present.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And they even highlight specific phrases that can help you become a more effective active listener.
Oh, okay.
For example,
Okay.
instead of just saying, I understand,
Uh-huh.
try saying, what I'm hearing is,
Oh,
and then paraphrase what the person has said.
right.
This not only demonstrates that you're listening, but it also gives the speaker an opportunity to clarify any misunderstandings.
That's such a brilliant tip.
Yeah,
It takes, I understand, to a whole new level by showing that you're actually processing and reflecting on what you've heard.
exactly.
But let's get practical.
Okay.
The source material also links these communication superpowers to specific areas of life:
Yeah,
personal relationships, professional success, academic achievement.
yeah.
It's like they're saying good communication is the master key.
They really do. And they provide some really compelling examples of how these skills can make a tangible difference in each of these domains.
Okay.
Let's start with personal relationships.
Okay.
The source material argues that couples who prioritize open and honest communication,
Right.
combined with empathy and active listening,
Mm-hmm.
tend to experience higher levels of intimacy and satisfaction in their relationships.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
When you feel like you can truly be yourself and express your thoughts and feelings without judgment, it creates a sense of safety and trust that strengthens the bond.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And they even suggest setting aside dedicated time for these conversations,
Oh, okay.
free from distractions,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
both partners can feel heard and understood.
I love that idea.
Right.
It's like creating a sacred space for connection and deeper understanding.
Yes.
But what about the professional world?
Right.
How do empathy and active listening translate to success in the workplace?
The source material makes a strong case for the idea that these skills are no longer just soft skills, but essential qualities for effective leadership.
Okay.
They highlight research showing that leaders who demonstrate empathy and actively listen to their team members foster a more positive and productive work environment.
I can imagine that a leader who truly listens and understands their team's perspectives would be much more effective at motivating and inspiring them.
Yes.
It's not just about barking orders, it's about creating a culture of collaboration and mutual respect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they provide specific examples of how leaders can implement these skills,
Okay.
like holding regular one-on-one meetings with team members,
Uh-huh.
actively seeking feedback,
Right.
and creating opportunities for open dialogue and idea sharing.
So it's about shifting from a command and control leadership style to a more collaborative and empowering approach.
Precisely.
Okay.
And they even suggest that leaders can use active listening techniques during performance reviews to create a more constructive and supportive experience for both parties.
That's such a great idea.
Right.
Instead of it feeling like a one-sided judgment,
Yeah.
it becomes a collaborative conversation where both the leader and the team member can share their perspectives and work together to identify areas for growth and development.
Exactly.
Right.
And speaking growth and development,
Yes.
the source material also highlights the crucial role of communication skills in academic success.
Right.
They emphasize that students who can effectively articulate their ideas,
Mm.
both verbally and in writing,
Right.
are more likely to excel in their studies.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Whether it's participating in class discussions, writing essays, or giving presentations, strong communication skills can make all the difference in how students are perceived by their professors and peers.
Absolutely.
Right.
And they even highlight the importance of active listening in the classroom.
Right.
Students who are actively engaged with the material and their classmates
Mm-hmm.
are not only more likely to retain information, but they also create a more dynamic and enriching learning environment for everyone.
So it's not just about passively absorbing information.
Mm-hmm.
It's about actively participating in the learning process
Yes.
and contributing to a collaborative atmosphere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they suggest the students can practice active listening by asking thoughtful questions,
Uh-huh.
summarizing key points,
Right.
and respectfully challenging ideas they disagree with.
Those are all such valuable skills that go way beyond the classroom.
Yes.
It's about becoming a lifelong learner who's constantly seeking to understand different perspectives and engage in meaningful dialogue.
Absolutely.
But what about those times when things get a little heated,
Yeah.
conflict?
Conflict resolution.
Right.
This is where those communication superpowers become absolutely essential.
Because if you're not careful, a small disagreement can easily escalate into a full-blown argument, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the source material emphasizes that communication can actually be the key to resolving conflicts peacefully and effectively.
Okay.
It's about using those empathy and active listening skills to de-escalate the situation and find common ground.
So instead of resorting to personal attacks or shutting down completely,
Right.
I should try to understand the other person's perspective, even if I don't agree with it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the source provides a really helpful framework for approaching conflict resolution.
Okay.
They suggest using I statements to express your feelings and needs without blaming the other person.
Right.
For example, instead of saying you always do this,
Yeah.
try saying I feel hurt when.
That's a great tip.
Yeah,
It's about taking ownership of your emotions and expressing them in a way that's assertive but not aggressive.
precisely.
Right.
And they also emphasize the importance of finding a time and place to have these conversations where both parties feel comfortable and can speak freely without distractions.
It's like creating a safe space for open and honest dialogue, even when emotions are running high.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they even suggest taking breaks if the conversation becomes too heated, giving everyone a chance to calm down and collect their thoughts.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
It's about approaching conflict resolution with a spirit of collaboration and a genuine desire to find a solution that works for everyone involved.
precisely.
Right.
And they even suggest brainstorming solutions together,
Okay.
focusing on finding common ground and identifying areas of compromise.
This is reminding me of the quote, "The greatest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place."
Right.
It's so easy to assume we're on the same page when we're actually miles apart.
That's so true.
Yeah.
And that's why those empathy and active listening skills are so crucial.
Right.
They help us bridge those gaps in understanding and create a more compassionate and connected world.
So it's not just about becoming a better communicator, it's about becoming a better human being.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the source material even suggests specific ways we can cultivate those skills,
Like,
like practicing mindfulness,
yeah.
seeking out diverse perspectives,
Yeah.
and challenging our own biases.
Those are all such powerful actions that can ripple out and create positive change in all areas of our lives.
Absolutely.
Right.
And speaking of positive change, the source material also delves into the fascinating connection between communication skills and personal growth.
Okay.
They suggest that by improving our communication, we can actually boost our self-esteem,
Wow.
build stronger relationships,
Right.
and achieve greater success in all areas of life.
It's like communication is the key that unlocks our full potential.
Yes.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
there's one more topic I want to touch on.
Okay.
The source material spends quite a bit of time discussing the importance of nonverbal communication,
Yes,
even going so far as to call it the silent language that speaks volumes.
they do.
Right.
And they highlight some really interesting research findings about how much we communicate
Hmm.
without ever uttering a word.
I know I'm guilty of underestimating just how much my posture, facial expressions, and even the way I use my hands can affect how my message is received.
Yeah, it's something we all do.
Right.
The source material points out that nonverbal communication is often subconscious.
Okay.
We're not always aware of the signals we're sending,
Right.
but that doesn't make them any less powerful.
Oh. So how do we become more aware of our own nonverbal cues? It feels a bit like trying to watch yourself sleep.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
The source material actually suggests a really interesting exercise.
Okay.
They recommend recording yourself having a conversation. It
Uh,
could be a practice presentation
Yeah.
or even just a chat with a friend,
Right.
and then watching it back, paying close attention to your nonverbal behavior.
That sounds a little terrifying, but also incredibly insightful. I wonder what I'd discover about my own nonverbal habits.
It can be really eye-opening.
Ah.
The source material says that common things people notice are excessive fidgeting, lack of eye contact, or even a mismatch between their facial expressions and their words.
So it's like holding up a mirror to our communication style and seeing those blind spots we might not otherwise notice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the source material goes on to offer specific tips for improving our nonverbal communication.
Okay.
For example, they suggest practicing open and relaxed body language,
Uh-huh.
using hand gestures purposefully to emphasize key points,
Okay.
and maintaining appropriate eye contact to build rapport.
Those are all great tips.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about how important it is to be mindful of our nonverbal communication in different settings. What might work in a casual conversation with friends might not be appropriate in a professional setting.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
The source material actually dedicates an entire section to discussing how nonverbal communication can vary across cultures.
Right.
What's considered polite or respectful in one culture might be perceived as rude or offensive in another.
That's so important to remember, especially in today's increasingly globalized world. I'm starting to see how mastering nonverbal communication is almost like learning a whole new language.
It is. And
Wow.
just like learning any language, it takes practice and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones.
This deep dive has been amazing. We've covered so much ground, from the fundamental elements of communication to the nuances of empathy, active listening, and nonverbal cues. But I think what's resonating most with me is this idea that effective communication is about so much more than just conveying information. It's about creating genuine connections, fostering understanding, and building a more compassionate and fulfilling world.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And the source material beautifully emphasizes this point, highlighting that communication is at the heart of all human interaction, from our intimate relationships to our interactions in the workplace and society as a whole.
It's like those seemingly small conversations we have every day are actually the building blocks of something much larger.
Exactly. And they go on to say that by becoming more mindful and intentional in our communication, we can not only improve our own lives, but also make a positive impact on the world around us.
That's such an inspiring message. It's like we're all part of this intricate web of communication, and each interaction has the potential to create ripples of positive change. But as we wrap up our deep dive, I want to make sure our listener walks away with some concrete actions they can take to level up their communication game.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
The source material actually offers a whole toolkit of practical tips and exercises.
right.
But if I had to choose just one, I'd say start by focusing on active listening.
It really does seem like the foundation of effective communication.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's something we can all practice every single day.
Okay.
The next time you're in a conversation, make a conscious effort to truly listen to the other person, not just to their words, but also to their tone of voice, their body language, and their underlying emotions.
It's like we're training our communication muscles to become more attuned and responsive to the nuances of human interaction.
Exactly.
Wow.
And over time, this will become second nature.
Right.
You'll find yourself naturally asking clarifying questions, summarizing key points, and reflecting back what you've heard to ensure understanding.
And that deeper understanding can lead to stronger relationships, more productive collaborations, and even more fulfilling lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all connected. So keep practicing those active listening skills. And remember, the journey of becoming a more effective communicator is a lifelong adventure.
Well said. And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of communication skills. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and are feeling inspired to keep exploring and growing as a communicator.
Until next time, happy communicating.